And if you redefine freedom, you have effectively redefined so many other dimensions of our lives, including what we understand a human being to be. The last thing I want to say about these three issues identified in the Manhattan Declaration, these three goods, I prefer to keep going back to that word. It's much more objective. It's much more based on reality. These three goods is that these reflect very much the pastoral discernment of the Fathers of the Second Vatican Council, especially in Gaudium et Spes. They reflect the pastoral discernment of our late beloved Pope John Paul II and our current Holy Father, Pope Benedict. And these three goods, defending them, are among the highest priorities which we, bishops of the United States, have set for ourselves in our own work and in the Bishops' Conference. So, I come here today at least to be able to say to all of you that to defend the three goods involved in the Manhattan Declaration is to be working profoundly in communion with the pastors of the Church as we share each in our own particular competency in the apostolate of the Church in the 21st century. End of part one. Part two. I want to talk about conscience as such. Conscience as it works, as it's an experience in the life of all human beings. Just an introductory remark about conscience and the Declaration. The theme of conscience is a leitmotif that runs throughout the Manhattan Declaration. Conscience, the judgment of the Christian conscience, is seen as a catalyst for us who have signed the Declaration, and it's seen as a catalyst for all that we do to act in accordance with our commitment when we sign the Declaration. And I just want to offer three quotations from the Declaration, two very short and one a little bit longer. We read in the Declaration, we signers, we with St. Paul, commend this appeal to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. In another place, Christians confess that God alone is the Lord of their conscience. Then a third, more lengthy quotation, inasmuch as unjust laws can claim no authority beyond sheer human will, they lack any power to bind in conscience. And this really is touching on the heart of the point I want to make. This remark about how unjust laws do not bind in conscience. I want to have us think a bit about where is the source of the power to bind us in our consciences. If electricity might have its source of power in a gas-fired generator, I think that's one kind of way to be a source of power. What is the source of power to bind my conscience? My conscience as such, anyone's conscience. And then in the second part, I will talk about what is the source of the force, whence arises the force to bind the conscience of a Christian. And obviously in this context, I mean specifically a member of the Catholic Church. The Declaration goes on. Dr. Martin Luther King's willingness to go to jail rather than comply with legal injustice was exemplary and inspiring. Because we signators honor justice and the common good, we will not comply with any edict that purports to compel our institutions to participate in abortions, embryo-destructive research, assisted suicide and euthanasia, or any other anti-life act. Nor will we bend to any rule purporting to force us to bless immoral sexual partnerships, treat them as marriages or the equivalent, or refrain from proclaiming the truth as we know it about morality and immorality and marriage and the family. We will fully and ungrudgingly render to Caesar what is Caesar's, but under no circumstances will we render to Caesar what is God's. I find this one of the most eloquent formulations in the Declaration, and at least one of the parts that makes me proud to have signed it. So, let's pose for ourselves this question. What is conscience? I think I could put it this simply. Conscience is that part of me that recognizes the truth about what is good and bad. It's a judgment. It's me judging, as a matter of fact. The problem with the word judgment is it sometimes can be seen as some sort of detachable entity, and that can happen. But conscience is me. It's my intelligence, it's my soul, it's me, it's the person recognizing the good as good and the bad as bad. And a little later on, I'm going to say more about the difference between recognizing something that's good and recognizing something good to be good, that it is good. So, it's a judgment about what's true and false, what is truly good, and what truly ought to be called bad. I think it's a very unmystical, very straightforward sense. Now, sometimes it operates in very obscure ways, but it's simply making practical judgments. It's a judgment, it's a recognition about two kinds of things, typically. It's a recognition about moral principles. Sometimes these get called moral axioms, but they don't always necessarily emerge as full-blown laws. We might think of them as more fundamental insights about what separates good things from bad things. It's right to tell the truth and wrong to tell a lie. Nobody should be used as a means to and exploited in order to achieve some other kind of good. These are principles, foundational forms that live in the virtues of justice, courage, and temperance, typically. They are judgments about what ought to be done, principles about what ought to be done, and what never should be done. That's one kind of recognition that conscience is involved in. It's the sort of thing that one learns in moral lessons from your parents. We don't lie. In this family, we don't have any place for liars. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. The second thing that conscience is about, it's a recognition beyond principles, is about estimating or recognizing individual goods and bads, singular acts, about knowing here and now, this is what I must do, This is what I must not do. This is good. This act is bad. Yes, I was taught never to lie. This is a lie. This is something I must not say because it is a lie. So principles, and then individual singular activities. Sometimes it's about what I should do, what I shouldn't do in the future. Sometimes it's about going back and evaluating, did I do the good? Did I avoid the bad? For the rest of the talk, I'm pretty much going to talk only about looking forward, not going back and evaluating what I did, but it always can work that way. Those are the sorts of things that conscience judges about. It's a recognition about those things. I want to emphasize that according to the wisdom that the church keeps alive, she didn't invent this. This is a natural wisdom, but there are a lot of people who have forgotten it. But it's very important to recognize that what is truly good and truly bad, whether at the level of principles or at the level of individual activities, is what shapes my judging. I do not shape the good and the bad myself. One of my professors, when I was studying philosophy, had I thought, an excellent term for this. We are datives of disclosure. The good and the bad disclose themselves to me. Or someone perhaps inadvertently was quoting Anna Russell today. Everybody's ever seen Anna Russell's comedic presentation on the ring cycle? And at one point, the high point of her presentation, after she's talked about all of the storyline and the Wagner's ring cycle, she puts her hands on her hips and says, "I'm not making this up." Somebody said that earlier today, and I thought of Anna Russell. We're not making this up. That's very important to emphasize in what happens when we come to a judgment of conscience. Recognition. We recognize principles, and we recognize the good or the evil in particular acts. In this judging, in this recognizing, I see a doable good as good. Let me just say that again. I see a doable good as good. So, in other words, this is not a kind of theoretical activity. To be excellent with your conscience and making moral judgments, ethical judgments, is not the same thing as being a great professor in ethics. Now, sometimes being good in ethical theory can help you make good judgments, be good in using your conscience. A little bit of help is always useful, but it is certainly no guarantee, and these are not the same skills. I look out at a whole field of possible activity, all of the kind of infinite things I can do today with my life. What choices can I make? Where can I go? Who can I interact with? What's possible? And my conscience is my faculty of judging that this is, out of all of this possible soup in the future, this is what I will make my future to be. To make a judgment about the doable as good, that it is good to do, or sometimes that it's bad to do and therefore must be avoided. And to see, as I said earlier, to see, not just to see something that's good, but to see a good thing and recognize it as good is precisely the experience of desiring it.